Guys, without any further ado, this is Proviron unleashed like you've never heard it before. Guys, we're going to go through all the pros, unbiased, uncensored, literally everything you need to know or could want to know for that matter. Then from there, we're going to go on into the cons. Again, unbiased, uncensored, absolutely everything you need to know. From there, we're going to drop down into dosage, talk about dosing, and also we'll talk about medical dosages with Proviron. You know, what was deemed safe for Proviron usage in medical and in medicine. From there, guys, we're going to finish up with any extra additional information that you need to know, things that plain and simple people either don't talk about in the first place or that is not well known with Proviron. So guys, this is Proviron Unleashed. Here we go. Starting with the pros, guys, and this is kind of a funny one with Proviron. Proviron, anabolic androgenic rating or ratio of 125 anabolic to only 35 androgenic. So you might be right away, if you know anything about Proviron, you might be pulling your hair out all of a sudden. Wait a second. Anabolic, what is that? Anabolic 125 to only 35 androgenic. Wait a second. I thought Proviron was extremely weak. I thought it didn't build muscle. What is up with this rating? So based on the latest information we have, 125 anabolic to 35 androgenic. Now, I want to go on record and I want to say this right off the bat. For those of you that have not seen Proviron's anabolic androgenic rating before. Proviron, in medical studies, in medical scientific research, again, with this rating, it is, wait for it, not accurate at all. Okay, there's a little bit of truth to this, but you know, the general, not just the general consensus, but the general scientific and medical results in the real world, how they play out, it is extremely weak anabolic, and it is actually fairly androgenic in terms of androgenic side effects. So, you know, what you could do here is this, with this rating, you have to take it, guys, we have anabolic steroids. Anabolic androgenic steroids, for example, that are dead on their rating. Like the scientists that came out with the ratings or ratios for certain anabolic steroids, they are dead on. You know, they line up exactly with real world practical application and studies. Okay, you know, real world muscle building studies or androgenic studies. Having said that, we have other drugs that are a little bit off. Think a drug like Anavar, think a drug like EQ or Dianabol, you know, a little bit off. Having said that, there are anabolic steroids, guys, that are way off. Halotestin fits this bill perfectly, and Proviron, guys, is exactly fits into that same camp as Halotestin. The anabolic androgenic ratio or rating is almost honestly not even worth looking at. Having said that, one thing you can do, guys, something you can do to get closer to that actual rating, guys, here's a little cheat sheet. You can take the anabolic and the androgenic component and you can pretty much flip them, and that is going to be much, much more accurate in terms of real world results. So, you know, the anabolic component could be argued, it's closer to 35 than 125, and the androgenic component, again, flipping that, much closer to 125 than a 35, okay? It's honestly almost flipped in that regard. Having said that, guys, moving on in the pros, Proviron is a DHT derivative anabolic steroid. Now, what does this mean? We have testosterone derivative anabolic steroids, we have DHT derivative anabolic steroids, and we have 19-nor, also known as nandrolone derivative anabolic steroids. And these three classes, guys, encompass pretty much every single anabolic steroid in existence. And the interesting thing, too, about this is that testosterone, DHT, and 19-nor are all found where? In the human body, okay? So these three different anabolic hormones is what we have, what scientists and people have derived every single anabolic steroid from. There's a couple exceptions, but almost all of them are derived from those three. Moving on in the pros. From here, guys, we got to talk about half-life. Proviron boasts a 12 to 13 hour half-life in the medical literature. So Wait a second, 12 to 13 hours. That is even longer than other DHT derivatives, such as Anadrol, Anavar, Winstrol for that matter. So when looking at the half-life, 12 to 13 hours for an oral anabolic steroid, that is a DHT derivative, 12 to 13 hours is incredibly long. So it has a longer half-life than pretty much every other oral DHT. Has to be said too, though, with this DHT, one of the reasons that its effects are different too is because it is not a C17 alkylated oral steroid. The C17 modification actually changes some of the properties and characteristics of the steroid. We'll get into that in a little bit. Moving on in the pros. Proviron, no estrogen conversion whatsoever. Proviron cannot convert into estrogen under any circumstance. So 0 estrogen conversion, none, nada, all right? From there, guys, we have to move into the next pro, and this is one of the biggest pros with Proviron, and arguably, guys, this is why people use Proviron for performance enhancement, bodybuilding, fitness, athletics, and the list goes on. Why? Not just does it do everything we talked about up until this point, but it has a strong, let me say that again, a strong or powerful AI effect. Now, this is huge with Proviron, so pay attention. So Proviron, in medical studies, in the medical literature, in the journals, Proviron exhibits a strong, I don't want to say very strong, because it's not on the same level of an AI like Arimidex or anastrozole. However, has to be said, Proviron exhibits a strong binding effect onto what? You guys guessed it, the aromatase enzyme. So thereby, Proviron attaches onto the aromatase enzyme in the same exact way that Arimidex, or any other AI would. Obviously different AIs do different things once they're binded to the AI. Some, kill the aromatase, some just bind it, block it. But in terms of this effect, this AI effect is best compared to anastrozole, which the brand name would be Arimidex. So in the same way that an AI works, and to get even more specific, in the same way that Arimidex works, Proviron, once it's in the bloodstream, will bind strongly onto the aromatase enzyme receptor site, blocking it in the same way anastrozole would. All right, and this effect, guys, is where Proviron gets its hardening or shrink wrapped effect, which we're going to get into right now. Moving on in the pros. And guys, other anabolic steroids that have an AI effect, like Proviron, is most notably what? Winstrol, Masteron. So these anabolic steroids do have an extremely powerful AI effect. And even halotestin can have a slight affinity for the AI. Can be some, it's argued in studies, but anyways, but without a doubt, we know Masteron and Winstrol have this AI effect as well. Moving on in the pros, guys, Proviron Unleashed. This is what I was talking about with the AI effect. So hopefully you were paying attention for that, because this is where this next pro comes from. With Proviron, moving on in the pros, a powerful hardening or shrink-wrapped look effect. Now, go watch my Winstrol Unleashed video, guys. I talk about this in detail with Winstrol, talking about why Winstrol, man, I don't want to boast out Winstrol before you guys watch all the cons with Winstrol too, because there's serious cons. Having said that, Winstrol, guys, will do what no other anabolic steroid will do. It will give you the greatest, most powerful hardening and shrink-wrapped look effect. Nothing does what Winstrol does in terms of making you look extremely hard, grainy, and shrink-wrapped. There's no other drug in the world that'll make you look as good as Winstrol if your body fat's low, okay? Don't use Winstrol. I'm not telling you guys to use Winstrol. Winstrol comes with a lot of cons. It's a double-edged sword. Go watch the cons in Winstrol Unleashed for all that information. Having said that, Proviron will give a hardening and shrink-wrapped look much like Winstrol, but it will not go to the same degree. Why? Because Proviron acts as a what? An AI, okay? So it's eliminating estrogen through all the different Sub-Q also, it's going to lower estrogen in the joints, which is going to hurt your joints. Okay, with Proviron, you're going to have some joint pain too. The same as if you took a large dosage of Arimidex and Anastrozole. But this hardening shrimp rack look, hardening effect on the muscles, pulls out water, sub-Q, going to give you a grainy look. However, it's not going to be anywhere near as much as Winstrol. Masteron doesn't do as much as Winstrol, and for the reason alone that Winstrol is the only anabolic steroid that acts as not just an AI, but also as an anti-estrogen, much like Novadex or Clomid. Winstrol has been shown in some studies, in this one study I saw, to actually bind onto estrogen receptor sites and do an anti. So Winstrol not only gives it, this isn't a Winstrol Unleashed video, but this is amazing, so I want to say it because we're comparing the two for a second. Winstrol not only gives an AI effect like Proviron, and a powerful one at that, but it also gives a strong anti-estrogen effect like Novadex and Clomid, where it will actually not just bind to just the aromatase enzyme, but it'll bind to estrogen receptor sites, blocking them to some degree. And that's what scientists have, reasonably concluded from different studies. Moving on in the pros, Proviron. This is a big one too. This is more well known than the other ones. Proviron does what? It has a profound effect on SHBG. For those of you that don't know what SHBG is, SHBG is one of the most important enzymes in the human body, also known as sex hormone binding globulin. Okay, so the sex hormone binding globulin is basically, it floats around in your bloodstream and it grabs onto testosterone. Okay, it grabs onto androgens in the bloodstream, and this is I guess I'm going to have to talk about the anatomy a little bit with this. So in a normal male, you have your testosterone, you have your total testosterone level, and you have your free testosterone level. Free testosterone is testosterone that's just floating around. It's not being bound currently or grabbed by any enzymes in the bloodstream. It's just floating around, doing its thing, binding to whatever it pleases. However, you have this enzyme called SHBG, sex hormone binding globulin, which will grab testosterone. Not obviously, it doesn't grab all the testosterone in the human body, but it grabs the testosterone. And what it will do is, the testosterone will not be able to float around as it pleases. Now, what people I got to debunk some myths here. Otherwise, people aren't going to understand what I'm talking about. Now, people originally thought that the SHBG was completely worthless. It was the worst thing ever. It was like a terrorist almost. The SHBG grabs your testosterone and you can't use it. Your body can't use it then. Well, that was the old school thought, and it's wrong. Okay, plain and simple. I want to debunk that. The SHBG does not do that. The SHBG, actually, according to later medicine, which is better 9 times out of 10, we know now that the SHBG, yes, it grabs the free testosterone and binds it. But why? Because the SHBG acts as a transporter and transports testosterone to different places in the human body to exert its effects there. So the SHBG, guys, does not make your testosterone completely worthless. And you see a lot of gurus and medical studies talking about, oh, this drug lowers SHBG, so your testosterone will be more powerful. Or this SHBG, guys, is just a transporter enzyme. So it is important. And the reason, a lot of stuff in the human body is misunderstood, okay? So, and honestly, guys, God doesn't put anything in your body for no reason, okay? There's no enzyme floating around your body that's there for no reason. SHBG is no different. Sex hormone binding globulin acts as a transporter enzyme for testosterone, very important. Having said that, in terms of muscle binding, you could argue that more free testosterone is better in terms of muscle growth. And that would be a long drawn out argument. Having said that, what Proviron does, now that we've talked about what SHBG does at length, what Proviron will do is, Proviron has, in the same way that it has a strong affinity for the aromatase enzyme to bind to it, act like an aromatase inhibitor. Not only that, but has a strong binding affinity for, guess what, the SHBG. So what's going to happen is that Proviron attaches onto SHBG, and what ultimately it will do is, in the same way it's grabbing and occupying aromatase enzymes, thereby lowering estrogen levels, same as an AI. What it also will do is bind onto SHBG, sex hormone binding globulin enzyme, and guess what? Increase free testosterone levels. So Proviron has a very strong and powerful binding effect on the SHBG and will basically increase free testosterone because of this. Now, again, I'm not even going to get into the muscle debate on free test to bound test right now. It's just that would go on for forever. But I will have to do a video on that because that's important. Moving on in the pros, we covered that one good, didn't we? All right, so we got to talk about this with Proviron. Proviron, this is another myth out there, and it's brought about, I would say, mostly by the anabolic androgenic rating. Proviron, low androgenic rating, right? It's got a low androgenic rating because, I mean, just look at that anabolic androgenic ratio. No, guys, it does not have a low androgenic rating. Proviron is fairly androgenic, okay? So again, it can be argued it's much more androgenic than a drug than it is on paper. We've already talked about the anabolic androgenic rating a bit, but it's known as being fairly androgenic in general. So when you say, oh, it's a low androgenic anabolic steroid, not really, guys. You know, you could argue that these ratings are flipped. That would be closer to the truth. So low androgenic, not really. I would argue, no. I mean, the thing is that is the androgenic rating? We know this isn't perfectly accurate, but is the androgenic component, the androgenic part that they've rated at 35, is it less than dihydrotestosterone? Yes. We can pretty much safely say, based on the dosages, medical studies, and especially when Proviron was given to females in medical studies, we can argue that yes, the androgenic component is less than DHT, which, based on what I remember, DHT falling somewhere between 300 and 400 androgenic. All right. So we can argue it's less than DHT, but it's still not low by any means. Moving on in the pros, guys, this is the last pro with Proviron. This is Proviron Unleashed. Proviron, good muscle builder, ? What's the truth of the matter? Here's the truth with Proviron in terms of being a good muscle builder, all right? You ready for it? Proviron is actually an okay muscle builder. You can actually build some muscle on Proviron. This is going to fly in the face of everything everyone's going to be telling you guys. But the simple truth is that Proviron actually does have some anabolic activity, all right? And it will build muscle. Now, is it going to build as much muscle as taking testosterone milligram per milligram? No, it's not, okay? Is it going to build as much muscle as equipoise or Dianabol? No, it's not. But the bottom line, guys, is this. Even though this rating is not accurate, we already talked about this, Proviron is still an anabolic steroid, and it will bind to receptor sites and activate them, thereby increasing what? Nitrogen retention, protein synthesis. So, can you build muscle off Proviron? Yes, absolutely. Proviron will build muscle. It is an anabolic steroid by nature. It has an androgenic effect we talked about. The anabolic effect is not very strong, but it's there. So, is Proviron, let's answer this once and for all, is Proviron a good muscle builder? No, it's not. But is it an okay muscle builder? Can you build muscle off Proviron? Yes, absolutely you can, okay? So there's a lot of misinformation, on this, but that's the summary, guys. And if you wanted to talk to me about Proviron being a fat burner, I would love to talk about Proviron being a fat burner, except we don't really have any research on, at least not that I've seen, on Proviron being a fat burner. So you could argue, because it has some androgenic rating, that it would be, you could burn fat with it. And I would agree, okay? Proviron might burn fat. It has some androgenic component, some anabolic component for binding, and it also is a DHT derivative, meaning it's been hardened against metabolism. And we see not just is it a DHT derivative, meaning it's hardened against metabolism, in the human body, but it's got a long half-life, right? 12 to 13 hours. That's even longer than other DHTs like Anavar, Winstrol, Anadrol, right? So theoretically, it would be a great fat burning, Proviron would be a great fat burner. But the problem we see is that this isn't the case, at least in muscle, because there's a problem with the chemical structure of Proviron that the body is still able to deactivate it, almost immediately. your body's native natural DHT, dihydrotestosterone. So in muscle, we see that doesn't play out. So the thing is that is Proviron a good fat burner? The plain and simple answer is I don't know for 100% certain. I'm just going to put that out there, be plain and simple. However, I can say this, based on what we know with Proviron, it's going to have some fat burning effects. How much, I can't say definitively. Having said that, guys, moving on into the cons. Guys, this is Proviron Unleashed. We went through all the pros, unbiased, uncensored. Now we're going to go into the cons. Here we go. Starting with the cons, first and foremost, biggest con with Proviron, or the two biggest cons with Proviron, guys, are the same two huge cons with every other anabolic steroid. Proviron's not an exception to this. The two biggest cons with the two biggest cons with Proviron are no different than any other anabolic steroid in existence, including your body's natural, native, beloved testosterone. What are the two biggest cons? Plaque buildup in the arteries and heart wall thickening. With anabolic steroid misuse or abuse, we're talking dosage, time on, body per how much you weigh, everything combined. But in terms of anabolic steroid misuse or abuse, or Proviron misuse or abuse, the two biggest cons are going to be plaque buildup in the arteries and heart wall thickening. Now, everybody pretty much knows what plaque buildup in the arteries is. That's where plaque accumulate, both soft and hard plaque accumulates in the arteries due to anabolic steroid abuse or misuse. And what's going to happen is that, when this gets bad enough, what's going to happen is basically you'll either have, serious medical conditions or it will kill you. Okay. We know, most people know what plaque buildup in the arteries does. And also a chunk of that plaque can break off and basically clog the smaller arteries, giving you a stroke too. And that's another reason I am highly against all this fast food and garbage in America. There should be honestly warning stickers on, places like McDonald's or, all these places that are using high amounts of, extremely high amounts of fat, and especially not the good fat, the trans fats. So there really should be warning labels. However, having said that, that's another video, another discussion. Moving on. What is heart wall thickening? I have to explain this every video because, if somebody's watching this video for the first time and they haven't heard my other ones, they don't know what heart wall thickening is. Heart wall thickening is pretty much what it sounds. But first I want to say what it's not. Heart wall thickening is not, I want to repeat that, is not an athlete's heart or an enlarged heart. It should not be confused with that. An enlarged heart, or an athlete's heart, if you would, both terms are used in the medical fitness, or in the medical, physicians literature. Having said that, an enlarged heart or an athlete's heart is where the left ventricle of the heart enlarges, basically expands, gets bigger. That left ventricle, left chamber gets bigger to be able to pump more blood out into the body. And this happens if you're a hard training athlete, especially with people that are endurance athletes. It tends to happen more than, strength sports or sprinters or other things. So you put the body under huge strain in terms of athletics, a lot of strain, a lot of training, take, Olympic marathon runners or whoever else, you're going to have an enlarged heart, and a very large enlarged heart or athlete's heart. Guys, there's no increase in rate of death or mortality with this. That's what we know medically and scientifically, because what's going to happen is that when you're done training, when you're done putting that stress on the body, guess what? The chamber goes back to normal. Not a big deal. What heart wall thickening is completely different. Heart wall thickening refers to this. When you take anabolic steroids, whether it's testosterone, Proviron, or whatever it is, at whatever respective dosage, misuse or abuse, what happens? Yes, your skeletal muscle, right, is going to get big. You're gonna hypertrophy skeletal muscle, but what's going to happen? The heart is also a muscle. It is a cardiac muscle, and there are androgen receptor sites all on and in the heart, just the same as what? A normal skeletal muscle. So what's going to happen is, your muscles, your muscles are going to hypertrophy, your skeletal muscle is, but your heart's going to hypertrophy as well. So what happens is the heart hypertrophies, gets bigger, gets stronger, and people think, oh, that's a good thing. Well, the heart wall hypertrophies and gets bigger and thicker, okay? This also happens with obese people because they're straining their heart. This also happens with overweight or obese people, depending on genetics, who are not taking any steroids because they're straining their heart all the time and the heart has to hypertrophy. It's like, it's like working out a lot. It's got, so their heart is straining all the time. Their heart will also hypertrophy too. Having said that, going back to anabolic steroid misuse or abuse with Proviron, testosterone, anything, the heart wall actually hypertrophies, the heart itself hypertrophies, thereby thickening the heart wall. It gets thicker and stronger. Now you would think on the surface this is a good thing, but it's not, because what happens is a thicker heart wall means the heart is not able to contract as efficiently, as effectively. That left ventricle is not able to contract as much, thereby doing what? You're not able to pump as much blood out into the body, okay? That's the bottom line, guys. So heart wall thickening is actually a bad thing, and this can kill you if it gets bad enough. So it's an issue. So nine times out of 10, guys, what kills athletes, bodybuilders, people in the fitness industry, 9 times out of 10, what kills people who are abusing or misusing anabolic steroids is what? Heart wall thickening and plaque buildup in the arteries. These two combined are responsible, for pretty much 9 out of 10 deaths in bodybuilding. It's always the same thing. It comes back to the heart, the heart, the heart, the heart. Some combination of plaque buildup in the arteries with heart wall thickening always, is what pretty much always kills people. Very rarely, the liver toxicity or kidney issues. Those can happen, but that's rare and it's pretty easy to avoid, honestly. Again, talk to your doctor about anything that I'm telling you. This is not medical advice. I'm just giving it to you guys how it is, all right, in my professional opinion. Having said that, guys, moving on in the cons. Covered that at length. Liver toxicity, question mark. Now, this is another area of misinformation. Does Proviron have liver toxicity? Let me tell you what all the gurus are going to say. Proviron is extremely safe. It has no liver toxicity. You can take 3 million milligrams of it and it's fine in terms of liver toxicity. Okay, I might have exaggerated a bit there, but the bottom take-home message is this: people say that Proviron has no liver toxicity. Guys, that is not true. Proviron is going to have some liver toxicity. Why? Because nonetheless, it has to go through the liver. Okay. Now the thing is that yes, Proviron by nature in the pharmacology is what? It's not. It is not a C17 alkylated anabolic steroid. What does that mean? It's not like Winstrol, Dianabol, Anadrol, and the list can go on. Okay, it's not like these drugs. It's not like halotestin. So the thing is that it's not a C17 alkylated oral steroid, which means that the liver toxicity component is way, way lower. Okay. With obviously Dianabol, Winstrol, and halotestin being the 3 worst oral anabolic steroids in terms of liver toxicity. So Proviron is not, okay? So Proviron, so people take this too far, they run the other way and they say there's no liver toxicity with Proviron. That's not true either. Proviron still, even though it's not a C17 alkylated, okay, oral steroid, Proviron still is going to have some liver toxicity. Why? Because simply it has to go through the liver. All right, it's not hardened. It's not going to cause all the same liver strain. But here's the deal. There is going to be some liver toxicity with Proviron. So don't listen to these people that say there's none. That's not true. You can't take, 3 million milligrams and expect nothing to happen. Or even, a high dose for long periods of time. I'm being slightly exaggerating here. But the point is that there's going to be some amount of liver toxicity. It still has to go make that pass through the liver. Having said that, and this is why you should always do blood work, all right? With your doctor. Make sure you have a doctor who's aware of whatever you're doing, whether, illegal or legal. And I'm not telling you guys, everybody should be doing everything legally under doctor supervision, period. But the thing is that regardless of what you're doing, you should be getting monitored by your doctor, okay? Labs are extremely important because the thing is this: if you strain your liver out and you strain it out really badly, what's going to happen? You can actually develop liver cysts or tumors. Guys, let me tell you something. Let me tell you a secret. You really don't want that, okay? So get your labs done. Get your liver checked if you're taking any medications or anything that has to go through your liver, all right? Moving on in the cons. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about high blood pressure and kidney damage. Can you have high blood pressure and kidney damage from Proviron? Possible, not at all probable. So if you took extreme amounts of Proviron, extremely high amounts, I mean, because again, there is an androgenic component. We already established it's less than dihydrotestosterone, DHT, but it's still there, okay? So the thing is that theoretically, from androgenic sides, can you have high blood pressure with Proviron? Absolutely. It's possible. Is it probable? No, unless you are abusing this drug. So having said that, high blood pressure, possible, not probable. So kidney damage from high blood pressure over time, possible, but even more likely not probable. All right. Moving on in the cons. Let's talk about this: androgenic sides and male pattern baldness. Can you have androgenic sides with Proviron? 100% absolutely. All right. Again, the androgenic rating we know is less than DHT. However, it's still there. All right. We don't know the exact number, but it's still there. So in terms of androgenic sides, in medical doses, people were given for androgen deficiency. What were people given in medical studies? 75 milligrams of Proviron a day. We're going to get into dosing in just a second. Don't go anywhere. Having said that, they're given 75 milligrams a day starting out. Well, at 75 milligrams of Proviron, is this going to bind a lot of androgen receptor sites? Not up and down with me. Yes, absolutely it's going to, okay? So the thing is that even though it's weaker than DHT, 75 milligrams of Proviron is going to be a lot, all right? So are you going to have androgenic sides? Yeah, you can very easily have androgenic sides such as what? Such as androgenic acne, oily skin, male pattern baldness easily. If you're prone to male pattern baldness, this drug is going to cause male pattern baldness. Whether you're slightly prone or very prone, you're going to have hair. You're going to have some hair loss, and that's genetic dependent. However, if you are not prone to male pattern baldness, you're not going to lose any hair, no matter what anabolic steroid you take. No matter what anabolic rating. Why? Because it's shielded. All right, because that hair follicle is shielded genetically. Having said that, let's see here. Let's see. We talked about male pattern baldness, androgenic sides. Moving on. And again, that's why, guys, I said that, it is possible to have high blood pressure if you're taking too much Proviron. Is it probable? Not unless you're exceeding, it is possible. It is possible to have androgenic sides and male pattern baldness, but, high blood pressure, but it's not extremely probable, as long as you're keeping your doses low. And this is another reason you should be getting your blood pressure checked. So possible, not probable. Moving on. Let's talk about this. And again, 75 milligrams, guys, initially in medical studies, that's a lot of Proviron. So could you have high blood pressure from 75 milligrams? Yeah. Could you have, long-term high blood pressure leading to kidney damage with Proviron? Yeah. Okay. Possible, not probable, but 75 milligrams is a lot. We'll get into medical dosage in just a second. Stay with us. Let's talk about this. Low amount of shutdown with Proviron. Now, this has to be said because this is interesting. Proviron will shut you down like every other anabolic steroid in existence and like every single SARM. And if you don't believe me that SARMs shut you down, don't listen to all these people that are selling SARMs and promoting SARMs because they sell them on the side anyway. People, let's just tag this real quick. If you don't believe me that SARMs shut you down, if it's legal in your country, take, do 2 weeks of a moderate dose of SARMs, go get your testosterone, and then you can comment below on how you were at like 200 or 100. SARMs shut you down, okay? Absolutely, they do. That's a lie that they don't. Having said that, Proviron, I guess you could say Proviron actually would shut you down less than some SARMs, but we'll get into this right now. So Proviron will shut you down still like every other anabolic steroid in existence. However, the rate of shutdown is less than most steroids, but regardless, it will shut you down, okay? It has to be said. Let's talk about this and we're done with the cons. Last con with Proviron, which is what? We are talking about low estrogen side effects. Now, why are you going to have low estrogen side effects? Well, guys, you should already know the answer to this because we've talked about the AI effect at length. Proviron, first off, does not convert to estrogen, so you can't use it alone. Second off, besides not converting to estrogen, it has an AI effect much like anastrel. It's not as strong milligram, but it's not nowhere near as strong, but it's still a decently strong effect. It's less than a Arimidex, but it's still there. All right. So you're going to lower estrogen in two ways. You're going to decrease the amount. You're not going to have any estrogen conversion from Proviron, and then you're also lowering it because Proviron is binding to both what? It's binding to SHBG, bleh, and it's also going to do what? It's going to bind your aromatase enzyme, same as an aromatase inhibitor would. And SHBG, this also means if you decrease SHBG, well, arguably there's less molecule for the aromatase to grab. Although I suppose it can't be grabbed anyway because it will not convert to estrogen. So anyways, that's it, guys, for Proviron Unleashed. As far as the pros and the cons, we're moving into dosage and medical dosing now, and then we'll finish up with any extra additional information, and then we're out of here. So dosage. Let's talk about dosage with Proviron. Check with your doctor before you do anything. However, this is my professional recommendation to you. 25 to 75 milligrams of Proviron every day. Where did I get this dosage from? This is because this is the approved or used medical dosage of Proviron when it first came out, all right? So for androgen insufficiency, in medical studies, we see dosages ranging from 25 to 75 milligrams per day. You can use Proviron at 75 milligrams per day safely. We've seen that. However, doctors usually backed people down from that to 25 milligrams, after I think it was either a few days or a few weeks. So 75 milligrams can be done, but you're going to want to move down from that. So this is going to be a lower dosage than you see, in general, assuming you're getting prescription pharmaceutical grade Proviron. But the thing is that, and I'm not sure if Prometheus HRT carries Proviron. I would have to double check, but I would think that they do. Anyways, guys, moving on. 25 to 75 milligrams per day. My recommendation would be, start out with 1 month. And if you're going to go to do 2 months, if you're going to do longer than that, I would make sure you're getting your labs done under doctor supervision. Absolutely. Okay. Anyways, you should be getting your labs and your liver checked on Proviron anyway, but definitely under doctor supervision if you're doing it longer than a month. And also, again, 75 milligrams, that can be, but when this was prescribed, 75 was usually an initial starting dose. Okay, they didn't do that long term. Moving on, and we are almost done, guys. Finishing up with Proviron. This is it. Last couple minutes into extra additional information that you need to know. We've covered the pros, covered the cons, covered the dosage. What extra additional information do you need to take home, and what do you need to know with Proviron? And guys, this is pretty much it. Proviron. It is not well known in the first place what it is and how it works. In general, in the bodybuilding, fitness, athletic world, and in the performance world. Having said that, we've talked about at length the AI effects, the SHBG effects. That's more well known. The SHBG effects are more well known with Proviron. But again, the big thing that people really don't talk about with Proviron is more so the AI effect. People don't know how strong it is. And secondly, this fact, and this is really the take-home message. Proviron is actually an okay muscle builder. All right, this is in the extra information that really you need to know. You're going to hear, again, a lot of people saying Proviron doesn't build muscle, but really, guys, it does build some muscle. It is an okay muscle builder. It's not test, it's not Anabol, it's not like these other drugs, but especially not like Anavar, right? With a but with a practical real-world anabolic rating of closer to 600 or 700. But, it has to be said, Proviron is actually an okay muscle builder. And guys, that's pretty much it with Proviron. So I guess the summary is this with Proviron. Does Proviron work? Yes, absolutely. Is it worth using? I would argue maybe, okay? Usually I lean, completely, either I say no, absolutely not, or I say yes. With Proviron, guys, you know, and the biggest thing with Proviron, one of the pros is the safety rating, okay? Proviron is deemed pretty safe. So the thing is that you can get a hardening effect with Proviron and an AI effect, which would arguably be a lot better than taking an anastrozole. So if you know, in terms of using Proviron as an in replacement of an AI, you know, I would say probably, you know, that's not a bad idea medically, because we know how safe it is. And you also get a little bit of, you get the hardening, you get the AI effect, and you also get a little bit of muscle building. Guys, that's not a bad deal for being able to remove an AI. You could replace your AI with Proviron. I would say yes, it's pretty good. However, if you're going to use Proviron as, you know, as for something for fat burning or for muscle building or for, comparing it to any other drug, I would say absolutely not worth it. But in terms of being a safe medical and performance drug that you can use in replacement of an AI, if needed in the first place, and to you know, obtain a good look, lower dosages, I don't see. Again, check with your doctor before you do anything. But in my opinion, I would say it's actually a pretty safe option. So guys, I'm Seth Spartan. This is Proviron Unleashed, like you've never heard it before. Stay safe, stay healthy, do everything correctly through your doctor legally. And guys, you guys guessed it, we are out of here.